Greetings, and welcome to the Abyss. To bring your true self to the past, you need a darkly elegant mask. We're making this Renaissance headdress today, y'all. Some friends invited us to join them at the Bristol Renaissance Fair, but we didn't have costumes. The issue I always had was that Renaissance costumes in general are too cheerful looking for my taste. So I decided to take inspiration from the movie Midsummer and create something full color in broad daylight and still creepy. But Celtic, not Swedish. My family's Scottish.
Alright, we have a piper who's down. It's alright, he's just missed.
Here is what I ended up using to make this Renaissance headdress.
Subscribe.
I styled the wig with a crown braid and extra extensions clipped on to fill out the back. First things first, measurements. I want the headband to reach the crown braid on both sides and be wide enough to cover the extensions on the top. With those measurements in hand, I draw up a pattern for the headband on a sheet of paper. Full disclosure, I am absolutely making this up as I go along. I have a vague idea of how I want the thing to look, and a vague idea of how to pull it off, and I'm figuring out the whole process as I go. With my measured points in place, I freehand the shape of the headband I want, which is ovalish with square ends. When I freehand, one side always turns out better than the other, so I fold the paper in half and cut out the best side, giving me the exact shape that I want. I check my work on the mannequin. Success on the first try. I found this package of 4 plastic craft mesh at the thrift store for 99 cents. It will make a sturdy base for the headband and allow me to sew things to it. Using a Sharpie, I traced the pattern that I made onto the mesh. I have a piece of scrap paper underneath as well so I don't get ink on my desk. I cut the shape out using scissors and take a moment to appreciate that the shape is somewhat reminiscent of a coffin. To keep the plastic ends of the mesh from catching on the wig, I need to cover them. Starting at the square end, I use off-white sock yarn and a crochet needle small enough to fit through the mesh squares to create a border around the headband using single crochet, which was tedious as hell. I followed that with one more round of single crochet just to be on the safe side. After the second round on the headband, I create the straps using repeating rows of crochet. I started with 2 rows of 8 single crochet, switched to double crochet, reduced to 6 stitches, and continued until the strap was 10 inches long. Yeah, I did that. Then I attach the yarn to the other side and do the exact same thing. For your viewing enjoyment, here is my cat, Froggy, helping me crochet the second band.
Extreme crochet.
When the other band measures 10 inches, I fold the headband in half to check my work. They match. Success. Back to the mannequin to make sure it works. The bands pass through the braid on both sides and tie at the nape of the neck. Huzzah! It works. But the plastic is very slippery, which is what I was afraid of. To keep the headband from sliding, I take some leftover anti-slip mat we had from our rugs and cut a small strip. Using the same yarn and a tapestry needle, I sew it to the underside of the headband. Ta-da! Back to the mannequin, and holy crow, it actually works. But just wait till I get going. Up next are the antlers. I ordered these online for I think $8. They're a thick foam rubber of some sort, very lightweight, which is what I wanted. I'm using a Sharpie to mark the inside point where I want the horns to sit. The antlers came on a crappy plastic headband, so there are already holes that run through them, making them easy to sew on, but that alone would leave them wobbly. So in addition, I'm crocheting a chain that wraps around the base of each horn. I left long tails on both sides that I ran through the holes and tied back to the chain to keep it from creeping any higher. I line up the inside of each antler to the marks I made to make sure they are centered. Using the same yarn and tapestry needle, I sew up through the mesh and around the chain at the base of the antler in a V pattern. This holds the antler very securely. Finally, I sewed through the mesh and the pre-existing holes just to really tie them down. As an added bonus, the V pattern stitching looks very Renaissance rustic. Not that you'll be able to see it, but I know it's there. Both antlers on, and it's time for flowers. I got these silk flowers at a local craft store. I went with a very washed out color palette. Vivid colors are far too happy. Before I can really do anything, I have to cut them down into usable sizes using wire cutters. Now it's playtime. I tried different combinations of the pieces I have to try and come up with a look that I like. I know I want the headdress to be asymmetrical. Matchy-matchy is, again, far too happy. I decide I'm going to start on the sides. Using the same yarn and tapestry needle, I sew the different flowers to the plastic mesh. Will this take 5 times longer than gluing them? Yes, ma'am. But will I be able to chuck it across the room and have nothing move or fall out? Abso-freaking-lutely.
That's the dream.
Really? That's the dream.
Yeah.
Back to the mannequin, I just keep trying different combinations until I find something evil. I settled on this one and took a picture to work from. I got a lot of sewing to do.
Sew like the wind!
It's important to note that right around here was where I got the idea that I would fill in the gaps on the headdress with some moss I had from a different project, but also decided that that was the last thing that I was going to do, so it was going to wait. Put a pin in that. It's going to bite me in the butt later on. The flowers are all done, so I finish up this portion by sewing in the ends of the crocheted bands. Now, any normal person would be done with this project, but I am both a weirdo and a perfectionist, and I demand a spider web between the antlers. I'm using a transparent nylon string suggested to me by a nice lady at the craft store. I'll be able to tie tighter knots than fishing line, and she swears it's the strongest thing out there. The downside is that the strand is so fine that I can barely feel it between my fingers, which makes it feel impossible to work with. The thread was such a pain to use that I took it outside to make sure you could even see it before I continued. Sure enough, it sparkles in the sunlight just like a real web. Damn it, that means I have to keep going because it's going to be awesome. Then I get about this far on the spider web before I remember about the moss.
Oh no!
I'm sewing in purple reindeer moss and dried Spanish moss to fill the gaps where you can still see the plastic mesh between the flowers. But now I have to work around a partially done spider web and hope all this yanking and turning doesn't wreck it. Nice lady at the craft store knew what she was talking about. That string didn't move a bit, which made me a much bigger fan of the whole thing until... I hate it. These black marks on these horns. Look at this crap. It's terrible. They came that way, and I saw it, and I was like, it'll be fine. They kept getting delayed in the mail, and I wanted to take my time on this because the Renaissance Fair is this weekend, and I only have so many days. And I was like, I just wanted to get it started. So I was like, it's fine. It'll be fine. And the thing to do would have been to paint the horns first. I was trying to convince myself it was going to be okay. It's not okay. It looks horrible. Which means now, with all this crap on here, and this web in the middle that isn't done yet, before I finish the web, I would have to paint the horns. But the thing would have been to paint the horns first. Why am
Whoa. That person has really gotten him or herself into quite a predicament.
Fine. I'm painting the horns around the spider web. Whatever.
Fine!
To rub salt in the wound, I couldn't find my acrylic paints anywhere, so I have to use watercolors, which is a terrible idea because watercolors never set. Even if I walk through a heavy mist with this thing, they'll all wash off. But that's what I've got, so that's what I'm using. Also, the only way to not make the paint in the crooks look blatantly obvious was to paint the entire horn. God! Now, I don't know about y'all, but I need a moment of levity. Look at him with his little glasses on. Alright, I feel better. Behold, as the crazy girl weaves a spider web with her own 2 hands before your very eyes. And finally, I sprayed the whole web down with my transparent wig glue to both make it more visible and glue all the tiny knots into place. Here is the long-awaited final product. You can see the horns look much better after painting, everything is sewn on tight, and even the web is practically indestructible. The straps are easy to tie, making it a breeze to take on and off, and the anti-slip matting keeps it from budging at all on my head. I don't need any bobby pins at all. It was a pain in the butt to make, but I really do love it, and it will last me for many Ren fairs to come. I may even use it in a music video or a photo shoot. To complement the washed out flowers, I also washed out my face, added red contacts, and some fawn-like white dots to my chest and face. I hope you enjoyed watching me fashion a headdress for my Renaissance costume. This is how to goth up anything, and I'm